Yo guys, I've got a spark which I'm going to use to ignite the fire for a very belated celebratory video here on the channel. We're obviously talking about the 10-year anniversary of Skylanders Swap Force, and boy, if this game turning over a decade makes me feel old. Over the course of 10 years, I've racked up plenty of nostalgia towards this game, so we're going to be celebrating it all at once in this very special video. Now, obviously I intended for this video to release closer to the actual anniversary of Skylanders Swap Force, but life seems to have gotten in the way, so now the video is incredibly late, but as they say...
Well, better late than never.
Skylanders Swap Force began pre-production in 2011, meaning that executives at Activision had enough faith in the Skylanders franchise that a third installment began development before Spyro's Adventure had even released. However, this game obviously couldn't be developed by the same developers as Skylanders Giants and its predecessor, Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. Game development is a time and money consuming investment, and a 1-year development cycle just simply isn't enough to make almost any game, let alone a large scale production such as a new Skylanders game. Therefore, each Skylanders game needed at least a 2-year development cycle, so in order for Skylanders to still receive a new title each year, the game series got split between 2 developers, so that this way, the year Toys for Bob didn't have a finished Skylanders game, instead a game could be released by a different developer. Activision tasked Vicarious Visions with the development of these games. Vicarious Visions had already proven their mettle when it came to being able to handle the franchise with capability because they developed the 3DS version of Skylanders Spyro's Adventure and they were in charge of the Wii U port for Skylanders Giants. Very little is actually known about Skylanders Swap Force's early development. Most of the knowledge we have originates from early concept art which is found in the art book Skylanders Strada, The Art of Skylanders Swap Force, but this is a rare and expensive book to get your hands on, as you can see from the image before you. What we do know is about an early playtest version of the game where the developers were using the title Skylanders Shapeshifters, and there were 3 characters available as a proof of concept, so to say. These characters were Kraken, Breezewing and Aftershock. All 3 of these characters had interchangeable heads and limbs, as that was the new gameplay mechanic Vicarious Visions wished to bring to the table. This gimmick was simplified so that Skylanders could now only change their top and bottom halves, and with that, the game's title also changed to Skylanders Swap Force. This gimmick worked on 2 different levels. First, there was the physical manipulation of the toys, where you could take off the top half of a toy, and then using magnets you could apply that top half of the toy to a different bottom half, for a rather wacky looking character most of the time. Since there were 16 of these interchangeable characters designed, this meant that there were 256 total combinations to choose from. Not only did the physical manipulation of these toys result in very goofy looking toy designs, but it also resulted in the exact same character that you saw on the toy being recreated in the game and brought to life whenever you placed that Swap Force combination onto the Portal of Power. There, you were granted a unique gameplay style for the combination that you just created. Getting to physically manipulate the toy and then see if that manipulation reflected exactly in the game is a truly magical feeling, and it brought these 2 worlds together. With a change being made to Skylanders Swap Force rather than Skylanders Shapeshifters, this begs the question, what happened to those original Shapeshifters characters? Whilst the characters themselves were scrapped, elements of their designs were reused for other characters throughout the franchise. For example, elements of Kraken were reworked into the Swap Force core Punk Shock, who became one of the last Skylanders Swap Force characters to be released. Aftershock was reworked into Fist Bump for Skylanders Trap Team, then Breezewing possesses an uncanny resemblance to Stormblade from Skylanders Superchargers. It's common practice for scrapped elements of Skylanders to be reused and reworked into later games. The original Magic Giant from Skylanders Giants, for example, was reworked into the Undead Trapmaster Crypt King for Skylanders Trap Team. Given that Fist Bump became a toy for a game that Toys Above developed rather than Vicarious Visions, whilst Aftershock himself was originally a Vicarious Visions design, it showcases that the 2 development companies worked in constant collaboration even whilst working on their own respective games. It's why you can jump between Skylanders games and still feel that same sense of charm and style, unlike some other gaming franchise where you'll jump into one of the sequels and it'll feel like it's from an entirely different franchise because the different developers took a completely different and inconsistent approach to the development of the game. But speaking to the charm and style of the entire Skylanders franchise, when it came to critical acclaim, it's Swap Force which received the highest critical score out of any of the Skylanders games. One such reviewer called Game & Age gave Skylanders Swap Force an A grade and commented that whether you're a Skylanders fan or a gamer who's looking for a charming and unique family-friendly game series to get into, Skylanders Swap Force comes highly recommended. It's easy to see that the ambition for Skylanders Swap Force paid off. You can see the ambition of the developers in every nook and cranny of the game because it's incredibly detailed and visually gorgeous to look at. Even 10 years later, the game is still visually striking. Vicarious Visions took such pride in the presentation of their game, and they even used a whole new graphics engine rather than reusing what Spyro's Adventure and Giants had already used. It was important for the game to look its best, as Skylanders Swap Force wasn't the only thing releasing in 2013. Only a few weeks after the release of Skylanders Swap Force, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 were launched. Swap Force became a launch title for both systems, so it was imperative that the graphics had to look great for both the current generation of consoles like the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, as well as holding up for the jump to the next gen systems. Luckily, thanks to the efforts of developers, it certainly did, and now we're one entire decade later and on these systems the game still looks great. Though these versions of the game have become quite rare and expensive since fewer physical versions of these games were made, since the game had already launched by the time the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 came out, so naturally less people were interested in getting the game because they may have got the game already. Plus, the systems were only just coming out, so very few people would have had the chance at that point to buy an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, let alone buy Skylanders Swap Force for the system. Rehauling for graphics and developing this incredible new gimmick weren't the only thing Vicarious Visions did to expand upon and continue to perfect the Skylanders formula. They opened up more gameplay and level design opportunities with the incorporation of a jump button. They developed entire sections of the game around this new ability to jump. One of the most memorable sections for me is the Tech Gate in Iron Jaw Gulch, where you're given a side angle view and you're challenged not by the game's combat mechanics, but instead by platforming your way through the section at hand. It was a nice way to spice up the gameplay and give something new to the players to keep the franchise feeling fresh. Bearing in mind, the pre-production for this game started before Skylanders Spyro's Adventure even released. After the first two Skylanders games were released, a big request from players was to be able to jump. Vicarious Visions addressed this desire before they even knew it would be something that players wanted from the franchise. It shows that Vicarious Visions had great hindsight when developing for Skylanders Swap Force. Just like the previous Skylanders games, Swap Force possessed a completely original and royalty-free soundtrack composed by Lorne Balfe, and it sounds incredible. The music really draws you into the world of Skylanders, as you feel as though the music fits into the world you're being presented with. You can even hear the incredible soundtrack for yourself as it's currently playing in the background of this video. As Skylanders is a franchise that I've been growing up with since the very beginning during the release of its first game, Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, it goes without saying that I have plenty of nostalgia towards this game. I remember fondly getting this game from Tesco. We went to the customer service desk with our Skylanders Swap Force pre-order, but the staff couldn't find the pre-order bonus items on the floor, so they spent about an hour or so looking around for stores in the back for these pre-order items. Meanwhile, I spoke with their colleague and she told me that the game was incredibly successful and that the copies of the game were virtually flying off their store shelves. I felt such pride knowing that a franchise I loved so much was being incredibly successful and that it was popular amongst my peers. Eventually, we got the pre-order bonus items, which came with a cool poster, and better yet, it had a free Lightcore Hex, which was my first time ever owning a Hex, and I really admire the dedication of that Tesco staff member for getting those pre-order items for me. A lot of staff simply wouldn't have cared and would have gave up trying to find them after 10 minutes, but she obviously could tell that I was excited for this game and that it was something that was important to me. The thing that made the release of Skylanders Swap Force all that more important to me was the fact that during this time I had only just started with secondary school, so having a new game on the horizon to look forward to was something that really helped me get through those first few weeks in a completely new environment and new social interactions that were previously completely unknown to me. Either way, after I got the game, obviously I headed home and started playing Skylanders Swap Force for the first time. But bearing it in mind, in 2013, the only console I owned was the Nintendo Wii, so naturally I had to deal with the infamous terrible graphics and long loading screens. But I was able to ignore them and simply invest in playing the new game, because I had just so much fun exploring these new and expansive levels. I did think they were a little too long. After all, I was much younger back then and I had a short attention span, so the levels didn't hold my interest for very long. I remember that Motleyville in particular really dragged for me, and by the time the level came to an end, I was fed up and I put the game down. The game wasn't as fast-paced as Giants, but since then I've come to appreciate the longer levels, and even though they're long, they never feel barren or empty. There's always something to explore in these areas, as well as collectibles to be found. I'm always reminded of my first playthrough, not because it was the most incredible experience I ever had. Like I said already, I enjoyed the game thoroughly the first time around, but I did have my issues with it. Not based around the graphics though, with the Wii being something I was accustomed to and Swap Force having so much to distract me, the graphical downgrade literally wasn't even noticed. Anyways, looking back to my initial playthrough, I'm reminded more so of my innocent outlook, how easy it was to overlook the flaws of something because you love it so much, and the prospect of that thing just simply existing was what got you excited. But now I see things more critically, and I see that there is always an extra layer to something. You can't take something at face value and believe that's solely what it has to offer. Games, much like people, are more than meets the eye, and as this perspective of mine has grown and matured, I've had Swap Force right alongside it to enjoy along the entire journey. Skylanders very much could have paralleled that childish sense of it simply needs to exist to satisfy them. After all, that's all I needed from the game, I only needed it to exist. But these developers were more ambitious than that. They wanted to make the best game possible simply because they were passionate about this game. They wanted to watch it flourish and become well received by critics and players alike. This is part of what made Skylanders Swap Force the peak of the entire Skylanders franchise. During the reign of this game, the money for Skylanders IP was raking in was through the roof. It was immensely popular, as this was a time where the entire Toys to Life gimmick was popular, since Skylanders for the first time had competition with the release of Disney Infinity right alongside Skylanders Swap Force. But it was Skylanders Swap Force that players kept coming back to. It was this game that saw toys flying off store shelves. Sure, Disney Infinity was also popular, but not nearly to the same degree as Skylanders Swap Force. And here we are, celebrating what has been a massive part of my childhood for the past 10 years. Gauging all of that emotion and that passion into one video certainly has been challenging, but I hope you enjoyed along the way, because this was a topic that was really important to me, and I'm quite proud of how the video turned out. Regardless, I hope you all related to my story about a decade's worth of being swappable, unstoppable. I cannot, in good conscience, end off this video without first thanking all of my incredible channel members whose continued support helped make these videos possible. Without them, these videos would be near impossible to make, so from the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate every last one of them. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, there are plenty of options on screen now to explore, and please consider subscribing to keep up to date with all my content. On that note, this video is coming to an end, so thank you so much as always for watching. Until the next video arises, peace!